Hello and welcome to Go Beyond Sports with me, Sonali Gupta, bringing to you stories from people in sports. Today with us is someone who shapes the athletes to their weights and sizes, Ms. Geetha Ghaliyavar. She is a leading sports dietitian, a university first ranker, a gold medalist, one of the very few registered dietitians with a post graduate diploma in sports nutrition from the International Olympic Committee, the IOC UK, based in Bangalore, India. With almost 19 years of diverse experiences, she was a guest faculty at Sports Authority of India, the SAI, advisor for FSSAI on sports supplements, and has represented India at the Worldwide Sports Nutrition Conference. She's a lecturer, speaker, columnist, and routinely works with eminent sports academies. She was also selected to work with the Royal Challengers Bangalore team and traveled with Delhi Capitals this season. She hones dietary practices of novice to elite national and international players for peak athletic performance. Welcome, Ms. Geetha, to my show. Thank you so much.
Sonali, thank you for the exhaustive introduction and definitely very happy to be on your chat show. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Ms. Geetha. And I'm going to ask you this question, which I always begin my show with. What about sports got you into it? And how did your life shape up with sports?
So that's a decade-old story, and I think I owe it to my mentor, who is the Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Shanta Maria, my teacher and my mentor back in college in Mount Carmel College. So 10 years ago, I did a certification program in exercise sports nutrition, which was basically a 40 hours of honors course. And, she's always encouraged me to do, better at every given moment. Even when I was doing my RD exam, I was enrolled for PhD. So I think she said, hey, the college is offering the certification. Why don't you sign up for it? And, of course, at that point, I had already learned about the International Olympic Committee, the postgraduate sports nutrition program. But of course, it was a huge amount back then. 10 years ago, even I think over 3 lakhs was a large amount. So obviously, I picked up this certification course, and I think I definitely had, a good teacher. So the foundation was laid, and it was, just understanding the basics, which was, a good way forward. And eventually, when I picked up a full-time job, and I could think of investing in the IOC course, because then I could afford it. And that's when I went back to studying again. And in the meantime, of course, I did my RD, I did my certified diabetes educator. So I kept studying, and I think there was a bit of a lull. And then I said, okay, let me go back. 2015, I applied for IOC course. So I've been very fortunate. I got selected. So 2016-17, I was studying, and I graduated officially April 2018. So I think that's where in fact, with just the high of the Olympics, and I think we've had the largest, number of medals that we've got back home. So the interest in Olympics now grows, and the passion for sports increases. So a lot of people also ask me, are you an athlete yourself? And I think I've not been that fortunate, though I've played some gully games in childhood, but nothing beyond that. But of course, I've been very fortunate to juggle nutrition for almost 19 years now.
Right. So I'm going to ask you, a lot of questions based in and around nutrition, because I'm sure that's something that intrigues most of us, and especially for all of the sports players out there who are watching it. What, in your opinion, if we begin this conversation, is the importance of a separate sports nutrition from a nutrition diet?
Absolutely. I think there's a world of difference. If you see our latest RDA, which has just been recently updated, if you see the guidelines for our recommended dietary allowance, it's kind of, it's totally, Mars and Venus. So I think as athletes, they have because I definitely go by the IOC guidelines, the IOC consensus statement. So the requirement and the way we kind of look at the entire portfolio management of macronutrient itself is very diverse and very different from what is the RDA, which we follow from the ICMR or the NIN guidelines, where we just say, okay, there is these 2,000 odd calories that need to be, consumed, whereas it doesn't work that way for an athlete. So it could be anywhere from 30 to 45, and if you see younger kids, it could go up to 70, 80 calories based on their, their phase of growth. So similar is the protein intake, and if you are into, sports that probably are not just strength, or power sports or anything that involves, weight bearing exercise or weight training. So there, obviously, those days you need, anywhere upward 1.5 gram protein per kg body weight. So our calculations are a bit different. Honestly, the RDA doesn't suffice at all. If you see these young, children in their primary teen years or preteens, it's 30, 40 grams of protein. Whereas an athlete at that age, I mean, I have swimmers who come to me who train like 6 hours a day. I think, but if you see the IOC guidelines, we see 0.3, 0.4 grams protein per kg body weight. So the calculations are very different.
Right.
So yes, so athletes have different vertical of nutrient requirement. So we cannot base it on the community data that comes from, the RDA
Right.
alone.
So how young do you think does an athlete really need to start their sports nutrition, considering that in our country, most of the times the coaches are their guides? So at what point in time do they really require to come to someone like you?
Well, today the outlook and the perception to a sports dietitian is definitely changing. It's evolved, and no longer are, in fact, today I think we're very fortunate that coaches reach out to you and respect you for your knowledge, and definitely they kind of trust you with your qualification and expertise to guide these athletes. So yes, there is an evolution, and the sports science fraternity has taken cognizance of the requirement of a sports nutritionist and a dietitian. Now, having said that, the parent community, because I think they're again a very strong pillar of an athlete's life. So parents are also today very aware that nutrition plays a very important role in athletic performance. So yes, I have had one or two incidences where children as young as 5 and 6 years have consulted me. But that's, I'd say on an average, I have about 8.5, 9 years typically who do, consult me. But yes, I think based on the awareness of the parent, and if at all there are challenges, sometimes there are nutritional challenges, either due to a health concern or if there is a nutritional deficiency, then we do have parents who seek help, because then the medical fraternity, be it a pediatrician, or whenever there's a issue that the doctors cannot address, they obviously say that either be it also malnourishment in terms of being obese or overweight, which is also a problem with young kids sometimes. So when they realize that, they would really the dietitian would add value to the child's health and definitely sports, they do recommend you see a dietitian, and even coaches for that matter. Now, of course, coaches especially in Bangalore, in the urban setting, it's very common that I think dietitians do work routinely with academies and make their presence felt. And in fact, we have a lot of youngsters who hop around and do a lot of seminars, and so I think that way the knowledge base and the whole the opportunities are several.
Right. So tell me something. While we do look at diet and we look at the importance of sports diets, do our traditional food systems cover these kind of requirements that are there for the kids at the very grassroots levels, or at the times when they're really starting off? We have a huge regional diversity in our own country. Say an athlete from the Northeast probably eats and drinks very differently from what the Western and what the Southern and the Northern regions. So is our traditional diet enough then to be able to take care of their nutritional supplements and requirements?
Yes, that's an interesting and an intriguing question, and the answer is yes and no. But yes, traditionally, I think as an Indian mixed meal. If you, I mean, honestly, if you ask me, I can't remember much of what I ate as a young child, because honestly, there were no other opportunities for us. Mommy gave us a glass of milk, and we were quite happy in the
Right,
evenings. Or
right,
we always had some snack made at home. I don't think we had, I can't recollect much of, indulging in some fancy food which was ordered in, or it was very rarity. Birthday means there was something fancy made and cooked at home.
right.
So having said that, mixed meals at home in the traditional Indian setting, if you see, there was always a vegetable, a dal, a rice, roti, or similar. If you see, even with our, multi-cuisine, availability across regions. But if you see our Indian diets, typically it's always based on these balanced meal options.
Right.
Unless and until now, unfortunately, the way we say things have evolved for the better, sadly, food has also evolved, unfortunately, not so much for the good.
Right.
With takeaways, with eating, from restaurants and hotels. So obviously the opportunities, and definitely with food science technology, there's so much packaged foods, so easy to reach out to, foods just ready made from the shelf for any emergencies, which not necessarily is just an odd affair, which is quite regular aspect now. I know so many athletes who love Maggie. They actually ask me, could I eat, a burger or a pizza, or any favorites that they like, chocolates that get very popular, ice creams. And honestly, I think you cannot alienate them as long as you're able to educate the athletes, the parent community, to just kind of look at the calorie balance based on the needs. I think, yes, traditionally, to answer to your question, yes, I think our meals were definitely balanced. But considering that athletes have a higher need, again, it depends on, you can't generalize. Like if you see, I have some kids who play football, but the family practices, non-vegetarian food at home, and uses a variety of, say, from seafood to chicken to duck. I mean, then you know that the child is getting high quality protein.
Right.
Now, at the same time, I have athletes who are vegan. I have athletes who are pure vegetarian who do not consume eggs. So we are just there to kind of, help them understand and, bridge the deficit. And then that's where we kind of look at the performance supplements. Otherwise, if the child is already eating healthy, you really don't need it unless and until you are in a peak training season, or you are in the competition, season. Because that's where, these performance supplements, be it a whey protein or, multivitamins, and, if you're traveling, and these can become quite convenient, and it's also a value addition. But otherwise, yes, if the family or the child has already got good healthy eating practices, you really don't need to. But at the same time, if they are vegan, vegetarian, growing athletes in the prime adolescence, puberty, if the growth needs are a large, growth needs require larger nutrient intake, then food alone may not suffice sometimes,
Right. So I'm wanting to ask you this question, and there are like so many of them in my mind right now. Do supplements and the variety that we have now in the market, right from the different kind of nutrition bars to the variety of proteins and the whey proteins and the isolates, and just name it, and we have almost everything. Um, are these a necessity for an athlete, or are these a necessity for somebody wanting to really be sporty, look bulky, go to the gym? How important are these?
Like I think I already mentioned this just a few minutes ago. To reiterate, if you are eating healthy and you already have balanced intake, now everybody's needs different, and the sport, like somebody who probably is into, say, badminton, has a very high demand of probably even carbohydrates, or somebody who's also doing weight bearing exercise or strength training about 2 to 3 times. Recently I have onboarded a bodybuilder, so obviously he's right now in bulking phase, so meaning that he definitely needs more protein and more calorie intake. So you have to evaluate and see what is the requirement of the individual, the gender, the traditional or the eating practices at home. Now, you can't generalize and say just because somebody needs 1.5 or 2 gram per kg body weight, which itself is 120 grams, which is quite large, unless and until you are eating a lot of eggs or dairy. Because like I always tell the athlete, I have parents who sometimes are apprehensive. They say, hey, I think, but do you think the child needs, a protein supplement? So I say, probably not. Yeah, as long as the child is able to drink a liter of milk immediately after the training, and that's perfectly fine. They say 1 liter of milk. Yes, because if you need 30 grams of protein, it's close to the 750 ml that you need even to get 25 grams of protein, and not to mention the bioavailability and how much is absorbed. The quality of milk, is it high fat, toned, is it, because the fat is going to bring down the absorption of protein. Right, a lot of athletes make that mistake. So you have to look at nutrient interaction. So yes, we cannot have a blanket rule, but we need to personalize that and educate them and give them the science. Like I gave you this example of a milk. Unless and until you eat a large portion of chicken, and now we know that even chicken itself, even if we do over 100 grams, it may not be those 24 grams of protein that you may get out of it, because now we know that through time, the chicken also, the protein quantity is coming down in the portion, right? So the quality of protein, also the digestibility. Is it a fast digesting protein? Is it a slow digesting protein? I know athletes who eat 4-5 eggs after workout, not understanding eggs will sit in your stomach for about 3 hours. Right. And not to mention that it will take you further longer for it to go into the intestines. And by the time those amino acids are released, it's going to be, we know there's an anabolic window period. And, ideally it could be anytime as you stop your exercise. And earlier we thought it was 2 hours, but now we know that, yes, I think the anabolic window period is whatever, 4-5 hours. And now we also know that it's not just that crucial time, but we also need to prioritize the equal amount of intake over 24 to 48 hours. Right. So we need to kind of, yes. So we cannot generalize, but we need to kind of, see the individuality, or we need to personalize that to that specific athlete. Right. And what role does science and technology now play in evaluating these players, in kind of helping them with the diet, with the food? Is there anything that really is out there which, like for running, we've had apps now, we have health trackers, we have monitors, we have a lot of science that's kind of going behind, we have analytics and data, and there's a lot that's going on. What's really there for these athletes in terms of nutrition? Okay, now food tracking is not something I personally recommend. I mean, of course, we all need to, journal sometimes, and it helps us document and, track progress. Apart, like I know some clients who very meticulously do, they use a lot of these apps and track everyday food. I find that very, very cumbersome, and sometimes also not very, what do you say? It's not foolproof, because food is very varied. Like, for example, a glass of my coffee, my cup of coffee can be very different from your cup of coffee. Right. And the amount of sugar, its composition, what kind of milk you use, is it slim, low fat? There's so many parameters. So I think food tracking can be quite dicey, and when you go by the T, it's not practical. You cannot weigh a banana exactly to 100 grams. It's not practical, and it's not mentally sound. Right. So as long as you are able to just use a ballpark point, and you are able to stick to the guidelines. For example, if we say we need 1 gram of carbohydrate, immediately after your workout, and you need it, say, up to 4 hours. So 1 gram approx is, say, if it's a child and it's 50 kgs, you just need 50 grams. So which means that if you do one banana, that approximates 25 grams, and you could do a glass of milk, and that's 15. So that's about 40. So we still have a deficit of another 100, and probably you could eat a fruit along, or something else, a
Right.
slice of bread, because it's not just that hour. You need to kind of continue that in the next few hours, or probably you do immediately after snack, you do your dinner, or you do your lunch thereafter. So based on that, you are still going to consume carbohydrates. So as long as you keep it realistic, I think that's what's important. So coming to the technology bit, yes, I think food tracking, I think everybody today has the assistance of mobile phones, and you have a lot of these apps. So but for me, I think from an athlete's monitoring point of view, I think personally, I would really recommend that these body composition trackers. The analysis is very helpful, because eventually, I think the entire the core of the performance is your metabolic rate and your muscle mass, or your lean body mass. So I think personally for me, the technology, because DEXA, dual X-ray energy absorptiometry, we have very elite athletes who can afford that, or if you have a sponsor, you kind of have the privilege to do that often. Otherwise, it's expensive affair, and not everybody,
Right.
because I think playing, you're an athlete, you relate to that. So playing a sport is expensive.
Right. Right.
It's not just the
So,
equipment, the coach, the dietitian.
right. So, so this was also going to be a part of my question next, is that is it really sustainable, and is it really affordable for a lot of athletes, probably those who are just starting out, or probably not everyone comes from the same economic background? Uh, can they really go through and sustain these kind of nutrition programs or assistance? And how do what role do you play then with somebody like that?
Okay, so I think, sorry, I'm not, I think with our discussion, I'm not able to kind of give you the messages there. So I think to go back to a couple of your questions, yes, protein supplements are fast absorbing and can be a value addition
Right.
when timed right and for the necessary person. Your second question, which I did not complete, was the technology use. Where we had 3,000-4,000 rupees being spent for DEXA. Of course, bot pod is again available in one or two nice centers from St.
Right.
John's Hospital. But they're very expensive, and not, like you said, you can't sustain that.
Right.
So bioelectrical impedance, and these are newer technologies, and I think for us, because they're very convenient, portable, affordable. So technology for me, I think personally, if you ask me from my experience, I would say yes, that is really helpful. Don't worry much about food tracking. So that was one question I wanted to complete. Now you said about sustainability. Yes, I think there is a point in our lives that when we come of age, there are possibilities for us to collaborate. And if you see my LinkedIn profile or anywhere else, I'm willing to offer pro bono services. So I think we're very fortunate that we've come this far. So yes, I think for dietitians with of my caliber, who have the experience and are almost touching 2 decades, it'll be a good idea for us to reach out to the community and help from the grassroots level to so many community projects which require our expertise. It will be wonderful. Even anybody who's hearing, the audience, the athletes who really need any help, please do reach out, because I do have one or two athletes who've been humble enough to say that I can't afford your fees. And of course, not that you got to reach, I mean, it's as per industry standards, nothing great. In fact, I'm
Right.
still far more very affordable and reasonable, I must say, in the urban setting of Bangalore, because I have junior dietitians than me who may not have my qualification at all, and without that, actually, sometimes charging more than me. So, but nonetheless, with all the humility, when they expect, or they will request that can you kind of help me. So yes, it's very flexible, and when you really see talent, because honestly, like right now with Olympics, if you see, the rovers who just managed to get to Olympics, and we don't need the fancy exposure or anything, but the raw talent. I think we've got to hone that. And like I know from the football academies who take on CSR projects, and who kind of take on these kids, and groom them. For all they are the ones who have that, the fire in them and are also very athletic. So yes, so there are different kinds of athletes, and if there is a need, this is in my experience that I have been able to help, of course very few so far, but yes, more open to helping everyone, those who really need the help and who do not have those opportunities. Kindly do reach out and I'll be more than happy to assist.
Yes, and I think I would just really reinforce this. For as humble as Ms. Geetha is, I think it would be an opportunity lost if you haven't really connected with her. Um, I want to just come back to the topic that we were on in terms of nutritional requirements, especially for kids, and we're talking about the number of calories and all of it. We are kind of aware, of course, with the difference between a male and a female in terms of the gender and the requirements and the body composition, structure, etc. Apart from just those differences, how do female athletes, or how does nutrition help the female athletes to sort of deal with the kind of issues that they have in terms of the monthly cycles that they have to go through, or perhaps the other kind of difficulties that they may have with their physical bodies? What kind of role does then nutrition play, and how do they correct it with it?
Okay, so that's a wonderful question that you asked, because today we have really kind of, I think the ladies are shining, and there's a lot of importance in understanding the physiological difference of males and female athletes. So I myself have been trying to read up a little more on the differences, and to begin with, females themselves have a lot more adipose tissue, unlike male, because the male sexual hormone, the testosterone, is fat burning. So obviously the muscle mass is a lot more in men, and whereas in females, once you start your menarche, which is the onset of your menstrual cycle, so the tendency to increase body fat obviously goes up. So, which means that yes, in the prime puberty, and also depending on the kind of sport, I mean, if it's an aesthetic sport, and even for that matter, swimming, I think these young girls do wear, figure hugging swimsuits to, there is not just a requirement in order to keep the fat mass low, but and also it's complicated. It's not just your estrogen, progesterone. What about your stress hormone? I know these kids who train so much, who don't get to sleep for 6 hours, and today we are taking the hormones that affect appetite, from ghrelin, leptin. Today, in fact, I just wrote an article on the microbiome, the gut health, and it's complicated, and definitely, and also the changing phases of the estrogen and progesterone, because estrogen is actually what also strengthens your bones, because it's not just anabolic, meaning that it can help you increase your muscle mass, but it also has a heart protective function.
Right.
But however, once you have your ovulation, and then again there is a cascading, or rather there is a different hormone that takes over, right? So then there is a phase where there is a slightly larger need for your carbohydrate intake, or there's a phase where you are able to kind of do higher intensity workout and do more weight bearing exercise. But I think closer to your menstrual cycle, when you are going to bleed, so again there is your craving, and you have your food intake obviously needs to be slightly more perhaps. So I think there are varying phases of this. And also now, if we have research articles to validate that females also have the ability to burn more fat unlike men. So maybe because we carry more fat. So so in the fat oxidation phase we also have, so there's a lot of data that is coming up from the research studies, which is exclusively being conducted on the female athletic community, but that's far too few, and it's still in a very rudimentary stage, and I would say probably one of the ice crystals of the tip of the iceberg, because there's so much that needs to be done, and most of this data is again very Western. We definitely, I wish we have more opportunities in India for even aspiring researchers like me, having enrolled with PhD or rather enrolled for PhD with 2 universities, losing 2 guides, finding the third one. And I think almost 18.5 years and more, I'm still keen that I could probably still pursue research. So I think that's something that, yes, we need local data on our
Right.
own athletes.
Right.
So yes, so there are physiological differences in females.
Right. I would like to touch upon this subject of banned substances and doping with you while we are talking about nutrition. Of course, assuming that at most times athletes end up having probably a supplement or a medication, or probably end up, with something that they aren't aware contains, because not everyone kind of breaks down the chemical composition of the foods that they intake or of the supplements that they intake. How would you explain this, in the sense, does our regular food contain anything that is actually out there on the list of banned substance or a banned drug or a banned something?
Probably that'll be marijuana, which is anyway banned in India.
Yes.
So if you're only looking at that weed, but I think food-wise, I don't think there's anything. See, food is, I mean, as long as it's something that's out of the list. So now, if you see the WADA NADA guidelines, I think what athletes really need to understand is the food first approach, and go with the science. And like you always, have people who are sound, who educate you. You see the pyramid. So at the base is always your food, carbs, proteins, fruit, vegetables, and you look at all of that, the good fats, and then the supplement is like the tip of your pyramid, meaning that you can't replace a fantastic healthy training schedule with awesome food, but you can't replace that with meal replacers or supplements. So you've got to kind of work around the what do you say, the food and the training together. Now, the challenge that can occur with banned substances is when you are overtly excited about consuming a lot of, tempting products which are not, obviously sound. Like our Professor Ron Morgan, who's the director of the IOC Sports Nutrition, says, if the supplement works, I'm sure it's banned. Okay, so because not everything works, there's no science. Like you take L-carnitine. I mean, if you see the like I always quote the IOC consensus statement, or I think I'm still the very orthodox old school of thought. I just go by the AIS, Australian Institute of Sport, the Group A evidence-based, be it creatine, whey, beta-alanine, sodium bicarb, and nitrate. So I think these are the evidence-based supplements. There's nothing beyond that. Even if you see your fruit extract, honestly, eat your fruit, because fruit extract still comes under group B. Like there is not much promising results, but not totally conclusive. So I think it's important for these athletes to understand that if you are consuming supplements, especially if you play at the professional level, please go with the third-party testing, be it informed choice for sports, BSCG, or and there are dime a dozen of these, Consumer Lab, and you have a lot of these, logos, which obviously you pay for because they do batch testing of these supplements, meaning that there's no cross-contamination, they're very safe, they're routinely tested. So obviously these products are also very expensive, because then you're paying for those testing, right? I mean, right. If you could use a whey isolate, and any decent isolate could cost you whatever, 2,000, 2,500. Right. But the minute you have these, third-party license, or those certifications, automatically the price gets bumped up by about $1,000, which is over $1,000 for just a kg. And an athlete has a huge need and requirement of these routine supplements. It's, say, probably somebody like me who's so petite and 43 kgs, I don't need much of that. I mean, I barely do weight bearing about 2-3 times a week with great difficulty, that too. So, but as an athlete who has, a high training load, probably they need about a scoop or more based on the requirement. So it's like eating rice and dal for them every day. So obviously the portion requirement really goes up. So I think the athletes have to really be aware, and we need to educate them of what are safe products. Don't settle for something which is just reasonable, which comes off a packet where you don't have the food label. read the ingredient list very carefully. Do not go with any herbs or any other products where there are 20 and dime a dozen things, like a concoction where you don't know where what comes from. So I think this is where you can kind of support them in making them understand, because all they understand is performance. I need to do well. I need some fat burners. I mean, I need some testosterone boosters. So their lingo is very different from, though we would also require that. That's also goals of your performance for us. But then we do it in a very slow and, scientific method, because honestly, there is no shortcut to fat burning and muscle building, because it does take a lot of hard work. Exercise regime outside of your sports specific training. So even from a swimmer to anybody who's, say, a footballer or a cricketer, you still need to look at your fitness conditioning and strength training, because that is what is going to kind of, balance out your, weight, balance out your fat mass and your muscle mass.
Right.
So you can't look
while you're touching upon, and we've spoken a lot about foods, on the same note, and I've seen this especially a lot in the urban setting, is that sports drinks and energy drinks has almost kind of become a part of even young kids, like you said, lingo. So the moment they have a break or they're off the game, they're drinking the sports drinks or they're drinking the energy drinks. And now we have all kinds of flavored waters, and we have the works.
Alkaline water.
Alkaline water, chocolate.
That's another.
So we just kind of have a lot of all of this. So again, what's your take on it? And also, how do you kind of educate? Is there a system now in place where we can sort of educate athletes and sports playing people, like whether it's through schools, whether it's through seminars and webinars, where they kind of understand the importance, which is starting from all the variety of waters and, the need to stay hydrated?
Yes, I think I'm glad you asked this, Sonali. I think the question or the simple answer to this question is, you do not need fancy electrolyte drinks and sports drinks. Okay, what you really just simply need is an isotonic solution. And in fact, mothers love me when I say you don't need a sports drink. Okay, so let me complete. There are times when an athlete needs sports drink and an electrolyte, okay, a solution. Now, which are those times? A person who is training for about 45 minutes to 1 hour definitely does not require anything beyond isotonic water, and isotonic water can be prepared at home. Okay, it is as simple as in 100 ml of water, plain drinking potable water. All you need to add is 1 heaped teaspoon of sugar, any kind of sweetener, sugar, jaggery, honey. Okay, now whatever is in your home, you add that, and you add about, in 100 ml, you don't need anything less than, say, 2 pinches of salt. You add a little nimbu, and that is your nimbu pani. That is an isotonic drink.
Right.
So we know that athletic performance can be enhanced, especially after 45 minutes to 1 hour, when the body's glycogen store is dipping, because there is limited amount of glycogen, the storage form of glucose in the body. It's like this: we have extra money, we don't carry it in our wallet, but we keep it in the bank. But when we need it, you kind of, you pull out as much as you need. So the glycogen is just there. There is, I think about 4 or 5 grams of, sugar in our blood at a given point at all times. That's because the liver manages that very beautifully by hormone balance, right? There's a homeostasis. So you have your insulin, you have your glucagon. So anytime there is a requirement, there's a storage form of glucose, glycogen, it gets broken down and it comes back as, glucose back into your blood. But after intense workout, or you finish, beyond an hour of workout, then the blood glucose is falling. And that can be dangerous. That's when dangerous, I mean, is, yes, you can feel very tired and exhausted. So children who train very long hours, say 2-3 hours, which is quite typical in any sport these days.
Right.
Now, those are the kids who need, an electrolyte solution, only because, and also you don't need any branch chain amino acids, you don't need L-carnitine, you don't need the jargon. You just need simple 6% carbohydrate, meaning glucose, dextrose, fructose combinations. You just need those little electrolytes, which could be simple as sodium, because it's the salt that is required for the muscle contraction. So it is as simple as even your table salt, your common salt, which is used in your houses, will suffice. So it is your sodium, chloride, potassium, and definitely magnesium, because magnesium is a anti-stress mineral, meaning it's a muscle relaxant. So muscle contraction is all about, contraction and relaxation. So there's a fine balance, and the body will anyway take care of it. So the ones who require the electrolyte solutions are the ones who are doing a high intensity workout, where the power is very explosive, and it's also exhausted, meaning that they get really tired. So they can use an electrolyte solution. Now, who needs a sports drink? Sports drink is needed by only athletes, say, who've gone to a competition, like say somewhere in Gujarat, or wherever it's like sultry and warm and humid, where you're going to be sweating a liter of sweat in an hour. So
Right.
So either those kind of climatic conditions where you do not want to have muscle cramps and giddiness, and you don't want to have your core body temperature rising, and dehydration sets in, so your performance suffers. So it really depends, again, for those high intensity workouts, very hot and humid environment, or somebody who's training beyond 90 minutes, meaning for endurance, a marathon runner, an ultra endurance, or sometimes badminton or any racket sports can also kind of vary. It can
Right.
go beyond some few hours of training. So in the peak competition season, or during a peak training season, that's where we say you could adapt yourself to a sports drink and an electrolyte solution. Also, it's a good practice to use these a few times, so that, and don't try anything new on the competition.
Right.
On the competition day, because you kind of have already a methodology in place, and as per your standard operating procedure, you've kind of already been there, done that, you tested that, and you say, okay, this has worked for me, I'll go with it. So yes, so it's a good idea to kind of just kind of try these a few times, experiment, and see your response. And also the flavors, sometimes athletes like a certain drink, sometimes it's very personal. You
Right.
have no explanation to that.
Right.
So yes, so not everybody needs electrolyte solutions and sports drink. So I'm sure a lot of parents who are listening to this will be very happy. Please make your own isotonic drink at home. Even diluted fruit juice
Right.
is an excellent option. Simple sugar, glucon-D, dilute the fruit juice just with water, and that also will suffice.
Right. Right. And so then coming to the question about awareness, and how does one really, are there programs now for sports players, or for athletes, or for grassroots kids who want to take up sports, to sort of have an awareness to their own nutritional needs? Also, what's the effect of then nutrition, especially on the mental health of these players, considering that nutrition plays such an important role? There are times when a certain food sort of can give you a craving, and then a withdrawal can sort of give you some kind of a mental stress. I mean, there's a lot that goes behind eating and then not being able to eat something. So how do you kind of, how would you talk about mental health in situations and in relation to nutrition?
So I think my mantra would be that I never say no to any food. I think we just have to educate and handhold these athletes to be able to say that, okay, you like an ice cream, how many times do you think you can eat that ice cream?
Right.
So I think, because as you said, they're quite raw and, edgy, especially if there's a competition. I know athletes who had tummy upsets, who throw up,
Yes.
it is but normal, to be sensitive, based on the competition day. So now, I also know athletes who probably did not, do well or perform well, and that can also be very upsetting. So then food is another option. Now with the pandemic, pools have been closed for so long, and the kids have the first thing I hear is some kids are doing well, they've maintained their fitness and, practicing, some exercise regime, or they're very careful with what they're eating because, as a player, the amount of effort that goes into your training because, it's like if you kind of withhold your program and you kind of don't take care, it's like two step backwards, which
Right.
means that you're going to lose the effort of probably a month or two. So some who are very, very conscious, yes, they're very careful. So we see a realm of different athletes, and then even at a young age, some children are taught that certain foods are good, certain foods are bad.
Right.
So there is a stigma attached to, I had a mother who recently said, oh my God, pani puri, my child will not touch because it's bad for her.
Right.
I mean, I would say, oh dear Lord, at such a young age, if you have such strong beliefs, I think we should be able to, because honestly, I think even growing up years, I've eaten a lot of homemade sweets, and we used to, my mom would make those, I don't even know what those are, like what we eat in our Holi, those kadabus, which are deep
Yes.
fried with sweet inside.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
for us, yeah. So any festival at all, there would be murkus and, and
A lot
I
of
think I've been
fried
lucky at
foods,
least.
actually. A lot of sugar and a lot of fried food.
Yes, absolutely. And some bit of indulgence and, in moderation, it's okay. So that's what I think we need to tell, and of course, food also impacts the way you feel, right? We
Right.
just talked of microbiome, your gut health, and we know that sugar can dampen or thought or what do you say, reduce the uptake or absorption of vitamin C and vitamin D. And you as an athlete know vitamin C is an antioxidant, and vitamin D is itself very powerful, not just for bones and teeth, but it's multifactorial. It's from your brain, the way you react to your moods, to immunity. With pandemic, you had people, I think, overdoing vitamin D, not
Absolutely.
understanding that yes, we don't need more than 100. But earlier, I remember we said, the parameter was 100 and it's toxic beyond that. And I'd be worried. And today, now they bumped it up, what, 100, 150? And now they're saying up to 250, it's fine. And we have athletes who come to us with 7, 14, 15, 20.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy. You tell an athlete, take a 2000 IU, they by mistake buy a 60,000 IU without understanding. And you have to double check. Are you taking your daily dose of 2000 IU? Because that's what you need. Unless and until your deficiency is so severe, probably we bump it up to 4000 IU. So you kind of have to kind of be hands-on and have that dialogue and conversation going, because you may imagine that, okay, I have given my supplement chart and the athlete is meant to take 2000 IU. Believe me, what he's taking is something else.
Right.
So yes, mental well-being is totally related to food and of course, and it's complicated. It's so many things also, right? Your environment, your situation, and so
Right.
much what's going on. I think it's heartbreaking scenes from Afghanistan right now. We may not be there, but just imagining the plight of the people, or the children, girls.
Right.
This is just so eerie, and also with the pandemic. I mean, this is straight out of science fiction.
Right.
So yes, it's complicated, and minds are fragile. There are so many imprinting incidences to, I don't know, it's complicated. So I may not be the best person to comment, but the resilience, I
Yes.
think it's important that by my own experience of losing my dad from cancer just so young, at what age of 17 years, losing my mom to, I used to study on scholarship, and for a very small amount. And I can only speak for myself that, I think I've definitely been a fighter. Had I better opportunities, I'm sure I would have, achieved a lot more. But with whatever limitations I had, and I studied in a government college because we had nobody else to tell me what to do. I went to college, I got my own application, we stood in the queue. I mean, if I can do that, anybody can do it.
Right.
So I think also the mindset, the perception,
Right.
and to have that attitude to say that, okay, I'll do what I can in the given situation, and to be able to be open-minded to say I'll keep learning, and it's okay. Like recently I was doing a webinar, and It was for a college, and I had one of the kids who asked me, "What about lipoic acid?" So I told him, though I know about lipoic acid, I had to suddenly say, "Oh, I am so sorry. I think I'll have to read up on that and come back to you." I mean, it's okay. You may not know everything
Right.
because you're not a computer. You are a human mind, and you can have a brain fog sometimes. But as long as you are able to be humble to say that, "Hey, look, I don't know everything," and if you have that attitude to keep learning,
Right.
and also to say, "I don't know," it's okay not to know.
Right. Absolutely. Right. So
So that's what it is.
I'm very I really want to ask you this question. I know probably 8 out of 10 people ask this question to every single dietitian, and probably not out of the books of most sports players, but um, this is about wanting to lose weight. Do the sports players also have issues about wanting to lose weight, wanting to look a certain way, to be leaner and fitter, whether or not it kind of supports the sport? But I think there is a lot of visual now that's going around for looking a certain way, for wanting to, most of them are wanting to be brands and and brand ambassadors, and everyone kind of wants to look good. So how would you deal with that?
Oh dear, I tell you, I'll be like, yeah, very apprehensive. So these are the dangerous lot of clients you don't want to deal with. Okay, not to mention the athletes. So I think I've been very fortunate. So I do deal with a whole lot of clientele, from company owners, directors to thankfully now mostly athletic community. I'm so lucky for that. And but yes, we do have a spectrum of lot who just see you because they want to lose weight. And like I tell you, unless and until they have PCOD or any health concern, diabetes, hypertension, cholesterol, so much easy to work with somebody who's dealing with a health concern. Unless somebody just wants to lose weight for vanity, it's those are dangerous lot. I mean, I tell every dietitian, please avoid them. Because I mean, of course, with a you take it with a bit of humor, only for the reason that you really have to kind of guide them with the fact that weight loss is a science.
Right.
You cannot be eating all you want, not have a certain, a streamlined structure to your eating habits, your lifestyle. Thankfully, in the pandemic, hopefully we've been homebound, but there is a lot who are very gregarious and do go out and drink and party. So for them, I think it's all the more. Of course, I cannot generalize, but we do have very, very professional clients who understand the science and who respect your qualification and trust you to help them. But we also have the other lot who can be very confusing. So it's very challenging to be very professional and diplomatic in educating them that muscle building and fat burning, ironically, are two different things. You could go on a hypocaloric diet and look at weight loss and fat loss, meaning you do strength training, because without which you can't bring up your metabolic rate. But if you are looking at muscle building, now muscle also requires extra food, extra calorie, extra protein.
Right.
So it's complicated, and that's why you kind of try, even with all these years of experience, it's a learning, for me, on how I can play along and look at weight cycling, carb cycling, and all those fancy things that we actually study about research, to simplify that and kind of make it easy for an client or any athlete to adapt. Because even if you see an athlete, yes, there is a requirement, at least with athletes, yes, there is a performance related objective, that yes, we need to keep the fat mass low, and you need to generate more muscle, for or rather muscle power, muscle strength. I mean, you need that, right? Because if you kind of don't train your muscle, how are you going to be able to get that output? So
Right.
yes, you kind of, so it's sometimes, it's just, I think, if you ask me, it's a matter of luck if you are very fortunate to deal with the right clientele, who sometimes, yes, it can be a sticky matter,
Right.
and quite delicate. So but it takes, as is with weight loss, so is with muscle building. Everything is time bound. Body composition changes are It's not a magic wand. It
Right.
doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. And nobody loses 10 kgs in a month. If a dietitian or anybody tells you that my client lost 15 kgs in 2 months, please do not believe it.
Right.
Because it's not sound, it's not science. And those kind of drastic losses are also not safe. Any amount of fat burners, you do green tea extract, your coffee bean too, I think it's $1 million industry, but
Right.
there is no replacement to healthy eating, exercise, and keeping fit. Fitness
Right.
is not about being thin. You can still be slightly plumpy, be a few kgs overweight, but you can be extremely fit because you do not fall ill, you have great immunity, you take care of your body. But
Right.
you can be sick and be, you can be thin and be sick at all times.
Right.
So I think the focus should be on health, well-being, like you said, your wellness, which is not just at body but also mind, and that's complicated, right?
Right. Right. Thank you so much for so much of an insight, because there are these, although they seem like a lot of common questions, but we just can never seem to have enough, especially because of the amount of misinformation and misperceptions and beliefs, and especially with a country like ours where food sort of plays such an important role in our lives. It's almost like one part of the religion that we follow with food. A lot of our traditions are revolving around food. So it does become very difficult for a lot of us to sort of learn and then unlearn, uh,
Oh,
about
yes,
ourselves.
aptly said. Totally. I think the first thing that when we onboard somebody, the first thing we say is kindly come with an open mind and be willing to unlearn.
Right.
Because either they worked with a few bunch of dietitians before, or they read something on the internet and they come with certain prejudices. So, like you aptly said, Sonali, I had an interaction very recently. High HbA1c, blood sugars are high, uh, is really keen on weight loss. So the only question is, tell me how much weight can I lose? Can you guarantee my weight loss?
Right.
How much weight can I lose? I mean, I wish I was God.
Yes.
Because if somebody understands the science and from where I come, I'm only trying to really be honest here to say that I cannot tell you how much weight one individual can lose. You can't quantify that
Right.
because it's complicated. You've got to address your nutritional deficiency, look at your vitamin D, look at so many other parameters. You may be tired. Is your hemoglobin low? If you're vegetarian already, your B12 will be low. Can we look at it in a more holistic manner rather than just say, can you guarantee I will lose 5 kgs in 1 month? I mean, honestly, in uh, you know, any sensible dietitian will not be able to answer to that question. And my request is, I think, to my own fraternity out there, and for that matter, I think any athlete, it's very important to kind of be ethical about this.
Right.
Don't fix, a kind of, like you aptly said, I want to look good. You can look good in so many ways. If you don't fall sick and you are healthy, that is also being good and looking good. Because if you're unwell and you take, like I always tell athletes, if you're a bit run down, take time for recovery, rejuvenate, sleep well, because that's where your muscles are building. Sleep well so that there's lesser delayed onset muscle soreness, because you're sleeping for 6 hours, you're going back to a 3-hour training in the morning, you are going to feel sick and sore,
Right.
which means that you are just totally amplifying your entire cortisol, which is
Right.
not going to help you. You are losing muscle mass and you are going to be craving more sugar.
Right.
But this is the jargon eventually. So kindly my request is, don't fix wellness programs to weight loss in the sense that I will guarantee you these many kgs of weight loss. I think it's personally, if you ask me, it's complicated. I think it's important for us to look at nutritional deficiency and so many other things. Honestly, I would, if there is a health issue and there's illness, I'd rather look at bringing down your HbA1c and look at blood sugar control than be focusing on weight loss.
Right. Right. Thank you. And I know, again, this is a topic and we just never have enough. But one last, and what really would be your tip, and what really would be a little trick that we can use for as sports players, for our nutrition, for our deficiencies, for our hydration, anything that comes to your mind? Just like you said, we can make our homemade electrolyte water.
Okay. So I think, just focus on small things. It could be as simple as, like you said, just drink your, chocolate milk or your milkshake, your lassi, instead of your fancy protein shake. But I think don't worry too much about, what someone else is doing. Or I see, this is always the query when I have one athlete. I always see that child just before the competition, they go to the side and drink something. I know the child never swims well, but on the day of the competition, the child has always outperformed because they're doing something else on that day. So there's always, obviously, the curious cat. So we are always enamored by. Similarly, such is life, that we always are enamored with what someone is or what practices they may be following, and there is always that alluring, that temptation of what are they doing, and it's but natural, but a human psychology. So I think, yeah, at some point, like I think at my age, I'm also trying to make peace with my life. So it's okay, just enjoy the small things, eat whatever you have, and you can make the most of whatever is. It could be like, recently in the pandemic, like I put up on my social media handles, the pumpkin, watermelon, and sunflower seeds. They're the most reasonable, 50-100 bucks. You don't need the zinc supplement. People have been going crazy about the vitamin C, and whatever, the name it, the fanciest of these supplements, which just kind of, I think they went overboard. The market,
Yes.
I think the pharmaceutical industry really was something that flourished in the pandemic. From zinc,
Yes.
the vitamin C, because vitamin C is a water-soluble vitamin. It's going to get flushed out in your urine. You're just passing expensive urine. You just eat what's in season, your amla to guava. You don't, like, I have a lot who always ask, oh, what about apples? Can I eat apples? I'm like, you don't know when those apples were plucked, when they were imported. It's 250, 300 rupees. Just eat that 10 rupees papaya, guava, you
Right.
like even with athletes, just eat those seeds, the richest source of selenium, zinc. I mean, you don't need Brazil nuts. The most expensive, the richest source of selenium. But just you could, okay, you don't want cashews, but you could still eat these handful of these reasonable nuts. Peanuts, what about peanuts? It's a
Right.
poor man's nut. And it's quite very healthy, good fats, monounsaturated fatty acids, and so many good things in
Right.
there. So you just have to kind of relate to that person. You've got to strike a chord and give them some alternatives and options. So I think my tip here is, just look within yourself and do what feels, what makes you feel good, what make the most of what you have.
Right.
We can't have everything, and for that matter, we'll never be contented with everything. So I'm at a phase of my life now that I, like you aptly said, I'm willing to give back to the community. I want to work with grassroots levels. You won't believe, I have volunteered for 2-3 of these para-Olympic guys, and these wheelchair bound academies. It's so ironical that it's almost so long that I have volunteered my services, they have not come back to me. So we are at a point now we want to give back. So similarly, I think we just have to just set realistic goals and simple things that kind of elevate you, not just in your mind, but I mean, in your body and mind.
Right. Right. And on this note, thank you so much for being here. I'm sure that the conversation we've had is probably so basic, and yet there is just so much impact that you create with these kind of conversations, because there are these questions that keep cropping up time and again, no matter how much information we have about foods or about nutrition or about supplements. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching. And yes, if you have more questions, please do address it, and we will have Ms. Geetha back again with us to answer your questions. And I do hope, from here on, we as players and we as a sporting nation is ready for our sports experts, and we are ready to take their services far more than we actually do to take ourselves to the next level. So thank you very much. Do like, subscribe, and do keep putting in your comments for me to do a lot more better than I can. Thank you so much.